chapter lead and Agile coach at DSC Digital. Agile has become mainstream and companies are rushing into a new way of working, copying each other and trying to follow one-size-fits-all model, which surprisingly doesn't fit same for all. Davor will share his experience with us. Davor, please, stage is yours.
So, good afternoon, and actually, considering the fact that there are so many parallel streams which are very interesting, and I want to thank you actually for choosing this stream today. So, the topic for today is Agile and digital transformation, but I would put it in a different way, so actually how to screw it up. Why? Because you are commonly listening, I would say now, about Agile and how good it is and how Scrum teams are working and Spotify models and all this other crap, which it's practically a mainstream. What I would like to share with you is not one again story how great it is, because it is, but to share with you our experiences, what we did in the Erste group on that, and how actually it didn't went well. Not because, Agile is bad, but, well, we misunderstood some concepts and, well, didn't take it seriously enough. And hopefully, well, what you will get out of it is, well, at least not to repeat our mistakes. So, let's start with the first story. How did we actually start with Agile? There was something like 12 years ago, the first touch with this new way of thinking, working in our organization, when I was working on a project where we wanted to modernize our core system, and the vendor we were working with from Singapore came to us to explain us actually what they propose, how to modernize the system, but also to explain this new fancy way of working. Now, the guy who was supposed to explain us this, he flew from Singapore the day before, and he wasn't aware actually of one meteorological phenomenon in Balkan areas. It's called propuh. I don't know actually how to translate it to English. It's breeze of wind or something like that. And only in Balkans it's very dangerous. Otherwise it's not. Well, he wasn't aware of it. Propuh got him. He got a fever the night before. Terrible fever, and in the morning when he had to present, I mean, he drank a glass of water, aspirins, whatsoever. He was still a little bit shaky, and he started explaining us, what this Agile is. And what he explained was, I mean, nothing wrong with that. He explained how this iterative approach works, what kind of benefits does it bring, that we have certain flexibility in that way of working, and so on. The problem with Propuh and his fever was, well, he got on the stage and he started sweating, and he was having this light lila shirt, which when you got sweating, it gets, it starts, changing colors. So we were very focused on him, metamorphing into something different. And of course, we were not paying really attention what he was saying. And, when you don't pay attention, then you hear what you want to hear, right? It's cool, it's, no worry about it, you can change whenever you want, it's fixed price, everything is great, yeah? I will not go into details, it wasn't great. The project unfortunately failed, this one, not because of Agile, but some other things. But one of the lessons which we unfortunately didn't learn, and we repeated them several times after that, was anytime when we are speaking about Agile and this new way of working, new way of thinking and everything, there is this huge narrative and focus on how great it is, how different it is, how sexy it is, and whatsoever. What is not being said is, well, there are still set of rules. I mean, it's a different type of a game, but it's still a game with the rules, with some very rigid rules, and you need to take care of them, you need to learn them, and you need to pay attention of them. Many times when we were doing some iterations of re-agilizing ourselves, we were somehow missing that first important lesson. And this is the first thing which I would like you to take with yourself, is that it's good, it's great, it's new, but you need to learn a lot, not only small topics. Which leads actually to the second story about these small topics. A few years down the road, after this failure of the project, Agile was kind of, forbidden word. We were not allowed to even say it aloud and whatsoever. But then new management came, and there were open a little bit to think about Agile and so on, they were not really convinced, right? So when you are in a management role and you now have to do something like Agile, what do you do usually? Huh? You call consultants, right? You bring them in. I mean, if they do something good, great. You are the boss because you invited them. If they screw up, you burn them at stake because it's their mistake. So we brought the consultants. It was actually the friend of our CEO then. And he explained everything again, how this great it is. First mistake repeated. But he also focused on the most common Agile thingy, which is called Scrum, right? Scrum. Everybody speaks about Scrum. It's great. It is, by the way. But the problem is, I mean, Scrum is not only one of methodologies there around. And have you ever wondered why Scrum is so popular among all the others? What's the reason? One of the theories I have is, well, among those 17 fathers of Agile, those guys who actually coined the term Agile and blah, blah, those 17 guys are IT experts, right? Very seasoned IT experts, developers, and they thought about different ways of doing software. Some of them wrote books and defined different methodologies. Jeff Sunderland, one of them, was a little bit ahead of them in some business acumen. So what he did, he trademarked the word Scrum. And there are a lot of companies providing seminars and certification about Scrum, right? You don't have those for Kanban, extreme programming, none of them. They are around, but this kind of monetization of Scrum brought a lot of popularity to it. And practically everybody thinks that Scrum equals Agile, which is wrong. I mean, Scrum is one of the tools. It's good when you know how to use it, but when you know when to use it. I will come to that as well. But one problem with the Scrum is that there are these two major roles in Scrum, right? Product owner and the Scrum Masters. And Scrum Master is very carefully chosen word because, it should present somebody who has certain skills. Now, problem is, a master. When you heard the word master, you expect somebody to have skills, right? Some very good skills. If you are, in martial arts, in order to become a master, you have to spend at least, a decade to come to first this black belt and whatsoever. If you want your master degree in academics, 5 years. How long do you need to become a Scrum Master? 2 days and 30 questions, multiple choice, 70% if you are Scrum Master with a certificate. This is the data conference, just to give you, data visualization. First, this is 10 years. Second line is 5 years. Third line, which you probably don't see, but it's there. Yeah, that's 2 days. If you like bubbles, the first big bubble, this is Jack Chen, whatever, karate master. Second bubble is Sarah, MBA. Third dot, small there. This is Fritz, the Scrum Master. Fritz wasn't chosen just by, accident. I mentioned when we started to work with the Agile, again, the board wasn't very convinced that this is the right thing to do, but they had to because everybody is doing it and, the things how it goes. So when they approached actually the teams to now shape those Scrum teams and whatsoever and to train Scrum Masters, what happened? If people are not really convinced and now you have to send somebody on training and you're very busy and whatsoever, whom will you send on training? You will send a person, who is probably not the top performer because, okay, you have time and it's better that he's someplace else and not bothering the others. So those guys came after the training, with a certificate and they started, preaching Scrum as the methodology. Everybody has to follow it, and they are the only ones who knew it. Don't even dare to this debate with them. And this led to the next problem. Now, in the Scrum and majority of these Agile methodologies, this is this, topic about teams, small teams. Everything has to happen in a small teams, which are multifunctional, multi-everything. Yeah, and then In those teams, if you noticed, actually, whenever there is some presentation about, Agile whatsoever, there is always white males with, nice beards and things like that. So this hipster thingy, I don't know what it is, but it seems that those guys sometimes spend more time, cultivating their beards and discussing about latte, organic things and those. If they spend that much time learning Scrum, probably they will be better, but that's only my opinion. I'm jealous because I don't have beard. Anyway, the problem is, in those small teams, now all of a sudden they become kings, Fritz, Scrum Masters, right? Because, management is not needed because, teams are self-sufficient, self-organized, self-everything. Again, we are in Balkans area. If you are translating this self-organization into our language, it's called how? Samoupravljanje, right? So it's also in one manifesto, but not in the Agile manifesto. The problem is, we've been there, done that, we learned that. We can debate how good or bad it was. Problem is, again, in those small teams, they were focused on themselves. They were focused on, interactions and everything cool, which is good. The problem is they somehow got lost, actually, in this focus on themselves. And this brought the next level of the problem in the organization when we come to a organization itself, because now all of a sudden everything is around small teams, which is cool. The question is how those small teams are then cooperating together. Who is taking care of that? Because all of a sudden there are no managers needed, apparently, according to Fritz. And question is, how can you coordinate that? Is it just happening by itself? So the theory is then coming to this famous Spotify model where, there is traditional way of organizational hierarchical structure, but now in the Agile you don't need, management or whatsoever, but we have small self-sufficient teams without, nobody is a leader, nobody is a manager, we are all equal, we are all jointly making decisions, and this is called squad. And then everything is organized in those squads, and those squads are then, according to topic, organized into tribes, like, tribe for core system in banking or payment system whatsoever. And then you have something which is called chapter, meaning people who are working on the same topic, like business analysts or project managers or Java developers whatsoever. And then there is some, guilds, which is, I don't know, talking about, again, latte or whatever. And everything is cool. Now, I dare to ask some stupid questions like, fine, sounds great, but first question. Now you have this bunch of people and you need to form the squads. So who defines which squads will exist? Second, who defines which people will be in those squads? Who is hiring people if you need them? Is team just, going on the market and asking friends to join them or whatever? What if somebody is not performing? Who is firing them or whatever? And after a little bit of thinking, like Professor Balthazar style, they came with the answers, well, it's management. Of course. So the question is, okay, fine, it's management, but what's the difference? There was no difference. In our setup, we kind of introduced this, product teams and everything was cool and, flat organization and blah, blah, blah. But there was a huge problem first. We were not thinking very carefully, and this is a very important decision. What is the product around which you are building team? We made a huge mistake because those products were made around IT systems, not about business capabilities, which in theory should be the case. And the second thing is, well, there are still some decisions that need to be taken in the general operation of the company or whatsoever. And there is no Scrum guide or whatever which is prescribing that, because Scrum doesn't take care about that. Scrum is written for a specific topic. I will come to that. And everything else, you need to figure out how it works. Which brings me to the fifth and the final story, in that there is this mantra in banking organizations that now, because we have this, multi-discipline teams and everything, now all of a sudden business and IT should come closer together, and they should together shape the products and everything, and this will be faster and greater whatsoever. Now, I will give you, just for the context, one example of a project where this really blew off kind of visibly. So to give you the context, the project was about automating one lending process. Don't read the details. I mean, lending process for large corporate loans, in which at some point of time, customer comes, big corporate customers, needs the loan, some evaluation needs to happen, some negotiations, approval, and finally the money is dispersed. Not a big deal. Now, looking at what we had in our environment, at the beginning of that process, there was, where is the beginning, CRM system, classical, where you have the data about your clients. At some point of time, the approval needs to take place for the loan, which has the system on its own. And finally, when everything is contracting and everything is done, it ends in the backend system. Now, first problem which was popping up, well, the sales were crying that this process of making these documents and templates take them a lot of time. They would like to have some AI which is, creating those contracts out of the data and whatsoever. They started one project. Second one was risk management, who said, well, our system for this handling the approval is also broken, old, doesn't play well. We want something new, which is digitalized, document-driven, data-driven, whatsoever. And then finally, our poor back office came and said, well, we have a problem when these contracts came, and these are usually 100 pages contracts. They need to find the data which they are putting in a booking system. And they also wanted to have some artificial intelligence, which is finding the data and, putting it into the back office system. So they asked me to help them a little bit, shape those projects. And stupid as I am, I didn't dive into the projects. I was looking, okay, so what are we talking about? What is the context? I started the talk with back office guys and asked them, okay, so you have a contract. This contract is a document, right? Yes. Well, how did this document came to existence? I mean, somebody was typing the data out of a system, yes, and Long story short, all data they wanted to pull out of back office on the document, we actually 70% of the data we already have in the systems. So the only question is, why the hell are we trying now to create 3 different new systems with artificial intelligence? The only problem we need to solve is actually how to properly carry that data through the systems and processes to the last mile. Practically, we don't even have to add additional systems. We just have to extend them and so on. So I will not go into details. Back to my point. My first question after we find out, let's say, better way to solve it was, well, I'm not some genius to see actually the solution was really screaming out the moment you put it out. I mean, it's so obvious. And how come nobody saw it for about almost a half a year? They were debating and whatsoever. And then when you put on that organizational structure, then you actually realize, some people call it silos, I call it castles, because there are very huge defense systems between those different castles. And as you can imagine, see, in every castle there is an IT system, and all communication between castles is happening via documents. And this is the core problem which we actually didn't even solve with this Agile transformation we did. We just made it even tougher. Because now all of a sudden all these product teams are fully focused on how great they are dealing with each other and so on. They are fully focused on their verticals and so on. And practically, bringing them together and actually deciding that maybe this one team in the middle is operating system which we have to kick it out. I mean, think about it. A team will never come with a solution to say, look, we are not needed. There is a better thing to do. They will never kill themselves, of course. They will find a way to survive, but in their search for survival, well, they will block your progress of automatizing your systems, and that's the problem. If you are focusing only on these low-level teams. Now, this is the problem which actually not only stops the progress, but it's producing bad solutions. We are implementing a lot of time and effort and money into something which is suboptimal, buying systems, acquiring systems which we don't need. And now, as the final topic, as my time is running out, Okay, what shall we do now about it? What might be the lessons learned worth taking off? Well, the first lesson would be, don't get yourself fooled with consultants, right? They are good consultants outside, but they are expensive and, difficult to find. The first, test question for a consultant would be, explain me the Agile in your words. If they start speaking about, Scrum and Spotify, send them home right away, immediately. If they cannot explain you in the plain words that, Agile is not, Scrum and Spotify, but, something different, but with different rules and whatsoever. We had consultants which were explaining Agile to our management without even mentioning the Agile manifesto and the background of it and whatsoever. So you can imagine what kind of training they got. The second problem is, again, with this focus on Scrum, the problem is the following. First of all, Scrum is not bad, but in the product life cycle, in which, every product has a life cycle when you are defining it, and at some point of time you realize that's a great thing, let's explore it. At some point of time, again, you realize, well, it's at the end, we should decommission it and whatsoever. Scrum is built for this phase of the product life cycle. And if you ever wondered why Spotify was so keen to actually build the entire organization in that way? Well, the answer is simple. It was a startup company which had one product, the streaming platform, and this one product was exactly in that phase of product life cycle. And of course, for them, Scrum was perfect. But how many organizations have one product which is in this life cycle? I work for a bank which is 200 years old, and we have more than one product for sure. So definitely you could use Scrum, but not everything and everywhere and in every phase of product and whatsoever. Because there are others. Just for example, Lean Startup, there is, speaking about Lean versus the Lean Startup versus the Scrum, there is only one book from Erich Ries. Very good book. If you haven't read it, read it. But again, this one is covering this phase of actually finding the right product. Scrum is not helping you there. Scrum starts when there is already decision to run. There is, of course, friend Kanban. In my opinion, this is much more, let's say, stretchy methodology. It's not better or worse than Scrum, don't take me wrong, but I do believe that you could use it in more phases of the product life cycle. There is, of course, if you are working with IT, well, Scrum doesn't deal with, IT specifics. It's not built for that. Scrum is just organizing the work within the team, but it's assuming, as Jeff Sunderland is also IT seasoned person, that people know their work in IT at least. And one of the things which, for example, in our organization I'm fighting very heavily is, well, if you want, consider now Scrum as iterative approach in which, every 2 weeks you are able to produce something. Well, if you don't have automated testing, your Scrum cycles are dead within, 5 iterations, because there is more and more you develop, more and more you have to retest, and at some point of time, all you do is testing, right? So one thing which is purely out of the domain of Scrum whatsoever, but it's there as well. And then let's not forget, it was mentioned already a few times today, well, if you want to have everything under control, you have some DevOps principles there. So long story short, Scrum is not enough. Simple as that. Then we have one more thing, which is usually there is also narrative like, Agile is not a methodology, it's, way of thinking, mindset and things like that. And the question is, well, what is the mindset? If you are hiring a person and want to check whether that person has the Agile mindset, what are you looking for? What would you ask that person? In my opinion, one of the key, ingredients of this Agile way of thinking, I would call it the entrepreneurial mindset. What would that mean? If you are running your own company, you are only one person in that company, well, you cannot afford yourself to spend time on, completely useless meetings and whatsoever. You need to focus. You need to focus on what is really important. And of course, you can think about different methodologies, ways of working and whatsoever, but you need to, introduce something which we would call common sense, right? In a huge organization, there is enough people, enough money, enough everything, and there is a huge tendency of, overspending time and efforts and whatsoever, and building, meetings for the purpose of the meetings. And then you are actually losing possibility to utilize those which are very important. For example, one of the ceremonies of Scrum, and we are mentioning it now so many times, is this retrospective, right? And if I'm observing teams which are doing retrospectives, especially among, the techie guys, they hate retrospective as hell because they need to speak, and they don't like to speak and whatsoever. But the problem is they are usually pushed to speak about, how they feel today and, how they collaborate and things like that. But they are not so commonly actually focused on what are they actually doing. If you would be a hunter in, 2 million years ago, and you came back without any prey, you will not talk to your colleagues, you would not talk to your colleagues about, how they feel, because the only thing they feel is hunger, right? So they would talk about how to catch something tomorrow or maybe move to some other place. So they will focus actually their retrospective on what they do and how they do it, rather than the feelings. And finally, agile transformation, digital transformation, whatsoever, yes, it is transformation. But on the other hand, we have a tendency when we do that kind of transformation is to change everything at once, which doesn't make sense. Sometimes you don't need to change everything. For example, in banking universe, there is a lot of talk about core systems are old because they are running on mainframes and whatsoever. Yes, this is old. Mainframe is not cool and whatsoever, but mainframes are built to last. For example, mainframes are able to operate zillions of transactions without even sweating or whatsoever. So maybe you don't need to kill that completely. Maybe you can find a way how to utilize it and build something on the top. Not always, but at least consider that it could be done. And since my time is out, I would just conclude, well, yes, Agile is new way of thinking, doing, mindset and whatsoever, but it's not the answer to everything, and you shouldn't actually take it as, Holy Bible. Simply, use your common sense and don't repeat mistakes which we did. So that would be it. Thank you very much. Questions? Yep, please.
Thank you for the presentation. It was really great and insightful. So just to ask you, in your opinion, now that you talk with your colleagues or generally in different kind of businesses, what would be the percentage of companies that you would say that have implemented Agile as it actually should be, and as you did speak right now, with the common sense for them, and what would be the percentage company that went to the Agile is?
Very little, very little.
Yeah.
Again, problem is we are trained by consultants who are all having the same answers for everything. So 90% of consultants coming to us, Scrum, Spotify, do it, everything will be great, literally. It's incredible actually that there is nothing behind that almost ever, including the top houses which are coming. And again, there is too much focus on individual teams and so on, which is needed, don't take me wrong, but the problem is it's not the only thing. This is in this example which I showed in the project, we build the organization with the premise that teams are independent and focused and cool working together, but those teams have to be decided, so somebody has to make a decision, okay, around which topics or systems or products or whatever it is, teams are there. And the whole structure somehow got lost in this transformation because all the focus was on teams only. And then, held started to lose. Yeah. No, please, if you have.
I have more, but
Yeah, please.
if somebody else, I can afterwards ask.
You have the mic, so you are.
Like, Agile came 12 years ago, and actually that was when I started to work, and I had the privilege to work for one company then when that implemented. Now we are talking about AI revolution and with what comes with it, and we still didn't like manage to like really make the agile living in IT and different kind of companies. So what would your suggestion be to how to approach this agile revolution now, not to make the same mistakes and not to need additional 12 years to, I don't know, come to the level that we are now in agile, and we are, as you mentioned, like really small percentage company did it right.
That's a very good question. I mean, I don't have simple recipe for that, but the ingredients will be first. One of the huge mistakes we did is, first of all, we choose wrong consultants and we got very limited, actually, amount of information which is needed for everybody to understand what this is all about. Again, it was focused on one methodology and, you know, one organizational setup. Second problem was that we only sent to training few selected people, and practically there was no spread of the word and actually a common learning of the whole organization. What is that? And again, so first of all, focus on one methodology and setup only, and then this was given to only one small subset of the people, and practically, you know, these people were definitely not the best equipped actually to run the transformation of the company. If you are doing usually transformation of the company, you're hiring, I don't know, McKinsey's and, you know, checking their CVs and everything in a detail. We send, you know, not top performers actually to run our reorganization. So that was ludicrous, but we did it. And third, then at the end, well, there is no recipe in those books and trainings and whatsoever. I mean, some years ago, if you were in IT, there was the fame of ITIL, you know, these processes and whatsoever, and everybody was looking at how the incident management should look like. I mean, this is also a set of principles based on which you need to adopt actually for your organizational model. With Agile is even worse, actually. There is nothing there except if you're looking at Manifesto, there are 4 principles. That's it. There are no rules, there are not, you know, nothing practically. It's just what you need to consider and how to rate those considerations, but that's pretty much it. Everything else is up to you. And there are tons of different methodologies, and those methodologies are built, again, with by the skilled people, again, Scrum, Kanban, extreme programming, rational, whatsoever. They are all built with certain purpose. And none of them has a purpose actually to transform your organization on it. It's, again, Scrum is for certain part in the delivery process. Kanban is a little bit more stretchy and things like that. But those things people need to learn. And more people get wider level of understanding, better chances that those people, when they will have a chance actually to do some organizational setups, that they will do it right. But again, there is no recipe in that. That's the point. So, you know, get as much as possible knowledge about these topics in as much as possible people, and yeah, well, then hope for the best. Yeah. Any other questions? Yep. I guess this is
amazing presentation.
Thank you.
Here is a certificate of appreciation for
thank you very much.
your contribution to the conference.
Thanks. Thank you.